Kilborn, Brett Parson. What time on the 13th? 7 and where?
I think it's going to be So Something Sweet, I saw them and they said they noticed a difference in the trash pickup collection.
Good. Oh, good.
I saw the owner last week and he was,
Time is 7 o'clock, and we will call to order the year-end meeting for City Council. Woo-hoo! For December 21st, 2015. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. DeGenova?
Here.
Mr. Rohr? Mr. Hellinger? Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here. Is there a motion to excuse George?
Make a motion to excuse Mr. Helen. Second.
A motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Item 2 on the agenda is the invocation, which will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight's invocation is going to be given by our Assistant City Manager, Jackie Walker. So all please stand.
May we remember, especially this time of year, to be grateful. Grateful for the city of Delaware, where we live, work, and play. Grateful for those who enrich our lives, particularly dear friends and family. Grateful for our homes and places of work. Grateful for all of those who protect us, both home and abroad. As we enter into the new year, may we all be blessed with an attitude of gratitude. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, Jackie. Item 4 is the approval of motion summaries. If the clerk will please read this on the record.
Approval of the motion summary of the council work session meeting of council held December 7th, 2015, as recorded and transcribed. Would you like to do both? Approval of the motion summary of the council work session meeting on council held December 8th, 2015, as recorded and transcribed.
Move for approval. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. That's good for both of them, right? Are they? Yes. Okay, good. And then item 5 is the consent agenda, the resolution of 15-57. If the clerk would please read this into the record.
Resolution number 15-57, a resolution appointing council members to various committees, commissions, and/or boards.
Thank you. And I just want to ask you all to serve on these committees. I know you all didn't get your exact wish. I tried to do the best I could, and then the whole idea of moving people around is, I think, good, that so we know what all different departments do. So I appreciate all your consideration in this.
Move for the adoption of resolution 1557. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. And item 6 is time set aside for letters, petitions, or public comments. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak on something that is not on tonight's agenda, if you could raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on to committee reports. And we'll start with Mr. Jones.
I have none tonight, Mayor.
Mrs. Keller? I have none. Mr. DeGenova?
I have none.
Mr. Orr?
Nothing.
Mr. Schaefer?
Thank you. Parking and Safety will meet January 4th at 7 p.m.
Okay. And I have nothing. And item 8 is consideration of a liquor permit transfer. If the clerk would please read this into the record.
Item A, from World of Nuts, Inc., 17 East William Street, Delaware, Ohio, 43015, to Delaware Market, LLC, doing business as Delaware Market, 17 East William Street, Delaware, Ohio, 43015. Permit classes C1 and C2.
Thank you. Chief Vijanowski?
Madam Mayor, members of council, this is a request for a transfer of a liquor permit from, basically from the old liquor permit holder, Mr. Michaelitis, to a new owner at the BP station across the street. None of the mandatory notifications within 500 feet expressed to us that they're going to file an objection. We've spoken with the applicants. We have no reason that would give us a legislative basis for requesting a hearing.
Okay. Any questions for Chief?
Who's going to file a complaint?
No one.
No, okay.
Well, there are mandatory notifications. We talk to them to find out what their intentions are. They have to file the objection or the request for a hearing themselves. None of those folks indicated to us that they were going to do so.
Okay, I misheard you. Sorry about that.
What is the wish of council?
Without objection.
Second?
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mrs. Keller. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. The applicant is here if anybody has any questions for them. Thank you for coming. Anybody have any questions? All right, congratulations and good luck. Item 9 on the agenda is the third reading of ordinance 15-113. If the clerk will finish reading this for us.
Ordinance number 15-113, an ordinance making appropriations for 16 and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and further to provide lawful appropriations available for expenditure by January 1st, 2016, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you. Mr. Holman?
Yeah, this is the third reading, and we sent out a memo on Thursday from the finance director summarizing the changes that were made. And at this point, we are recommending your adoption of the ordinance as presented. And we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, Mrs. Keller?
I have one. Tom, regarding the memo that you sent us about the pay for performance for employees, going back to last February, you mentioned something about having to include some software that would work with the NeoGov in our HR, and there was a plan to include that into the 2016 budget.
Yeah, so we reviewed a software program. The HR department and Dean and I have reviewed that. There is a reappropriation of dollars in the 2016 budget that will allow us to do settled on what it's going to be. But I'm not going to let that be a factor in moving ahead with that program for the directors.
Okay.
But there's a note, I think, in what Dean sent out that we're reappropriating some dollars that we can use for that program.
Any other questions? Okay, what is the wish of council on ordinance 15-113?
Move for approval of the emergency clause.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of ordinance 15-113.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova? Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. And item 10 is the third reading of ordinance 15-114. If the clerk would please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 15-114, an ordinance amending the Delaware Municipal Court and Clerk of Court employee benefits and leave policies and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause. This ordinance is declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, property, health, safety, and welfare of the city. The emergency clause is required to enact the changes effective on December 30th, 2015. Therefore, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Well, it's really the court. Nobody's here from the court, but it would be our recommendation to adopt the pay plan as presented. I think they were here at the last meeting, discussed it briefly.
So what is the wish of council on this? Any questions?
I make a motion to adopt the emergency clause in ordinance number 15-114.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Keller, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move for approval of ordinance number 15-114.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Keller, a second by Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 11 is the third reading of ordinance number 15-115. The clerk will please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 15-115, an ordinance amending ordinance number 15-88, establishing the pay and benefits for various part-time and intermittent and seasonal employees of the City of Delaware and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause. This ordinance is declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, property, health, safety, and welfare of the city. The emergency clause is required to enact the changes effective on December 30th, 2015. Therefore, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you. Mrs. Feller? I don't know. Do you have anything to add?
No, I do not. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any at this time.
Any questions, Mrs. Feller? Okay, most solicitor counsel? I thought you were here. You should at least come to the microphone.
Move for the approval of the emergency clause on ordinance 15-115.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer and a second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of ordinance 15-115.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mrs. Keller. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
She can stay up there.
You can stay if you want. Yeah, have a
Okay, but the next one is the
Have a
municipal
seat.
plan.
Item 12 is the third reading of ordinance 15-116. If the clerk will please read this into the record also.
Ordinance number 13-116, an ordinance amending the management, professional, technical, confidential, and supervisory employees pay plan and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause. This ordinance is declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, property, health, safety, and welfare of the city. The emergency clause is required to enact the changes effective on December 30th, 2015, which coincides with the new calendar year. Therefore, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Feller? What is the wish of council on ordinance 15-116?
Move the adoption of the emergency clause on ordinance 15-116.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move the adoption of ordinance number 15-116.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 13, consideration of ordinance number 15-121. If the clerk please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 15-121, an ordinance authorizing the funding of the Panhandle Bridge water main construction to the Delaware County engineer as part of the Panhandle Bridge replacement project.
Thank you. Mr. Stanton?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is for the approval of agreement for the construction of a water main on the Panhandle Road Bridge with the Delaware County Engineers replacement of the bridge project. This project was appropriated in the 2015 CIP. The agreement is for the city to fund the water main at a cost of $134,680. We previously had a water line across the river that was a part of the old Lowhead Dam that was just south of the Panhandle Road. When ODOT removed the Lowhead Dam, the water line was abandoned at that time. And we could not reach an agreement with ODOT to put in the new water line because of the fact that it was crossing the Olentangy River. It was embedded in the river as part of the Lowhead Dam, and we could not secure easements. And therefore, the few customers we have on Hudson Road are currently connected to a Delco water line. We currently pay that, they pay us our water rates, and then we pay Delco for that water. So we haven't had the water over to that part of the, on the east side of the river since 2009. We felt it was appropriate with the construction of the Panhandle Dam to get the water line reestablished that would provide service to our existing customers and also provide water service to future developments if they were to occur on that side of the river. The plans are right now to connect a 12-inch into the existing water line on 23. It will be hung underneath the dam, connected, to the bridge. It will be encased in PVC, and it will be maintained through the city, and then we'll tie it into Hudson Road and Panhandle, and it will be available for future developments. We also had the water line design previous this year, so the Delaware County recently bid the project out, and they're wanting to start construction at the first part of next year, and therefore we need just the approval of the agreement, and I believe the purchase order has been approved based on, or tentative with the approval of this agreement. I can answer any questions regarding this project.
This is a first reading too,
Right.
because it's an intergovernmental agreement.
Brad, just out of curiosity, if that Speedway project on 23 goes forward, is there any cohesion between the two at all since they're so close together, or
No,
can one cause any problems doing the other one, or?
No, the Speedway project, we have a 24-inch line that goes down 23, and Speedway will be connected to this. That 24-inch does feed the remaining part of the water line into the city south of Hills Miller. So they're interconnected, but two separate projects, and there's no concerns with capacity. It was sized appropriately for future development.
Any other questions for Brad? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Come back for another reading.
Yes.
Item 14 is consideration of ordinance 15-122. The clerk will please read this from the record.
Ordinance number 15-122, an ordinance supplementing the 2015 appropriations ordinance and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and for the further reason that such action is necessary to provide for purchases through the end of the fiscal year being December 31st, 2015. And as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Mr. Stelzer?
Yeah, I'll try to briefly walk through. I did have Michelle send out a memo summarizing some of the supplementals today. Wanted to wait as long as I could to make sure we capture everything that we may anticipate spending between now and the end of the year. But of the ones that we are supplementing here, there's nothing really that stands out in any way, shape, or form, but I'll walk through them and give you a little brief explanation. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in. On the general fund side, it was just two accounts that we needed to supplement. One was income tax refunds. We have to issue those within 90 days, so we really don't have a whole lot of option. The refunds were higher than what we had anticipated. And then building maintenance, we had some personnel changes there. The personnel cost in total for the building maintenance budget was by $6,800. Street maintenance, so that's the general fund. Street maintenance and repair fund, we do have actually this was Mayor on my part, preparing the budget estimate for 2015. We had a potential.
Can you say that again?
A budget error on somebody might not, just kidding. I just didn't change it back. In 2014, we potentially had somebody retiring, and they were going to retire after 8 months. So I allocated 8 months of pay, and then when I carried that spreadsheet forward to this year, I did change it back to 12 months, or for 2015, so it only appropriated 8 months for that person, and they didn't retire. So anyways, that's what that's for. Police court income tax fund. This fund's been out there for ever since we did that tax in 1990. There was a residual amount, a small amount that would come in if people would file their 1999 tax return, but that's pretty much all done. I want to close out that account. There's $95 left in there, so we'll find something from the building to spend $95 on. But then I'm going to zero out, close out that account. Police and fire disability, this is property tax collections. It's earmarked for police and fire retirement. The amounts that we collected was a little higher than we had anticipated. So I need to, because that money gets expended, collected in the fund, it gets transferred into the general and to the fire EMS fund. And so I need an additional $7,000 to make the transfer. Economic Development revolving loan, as you're aware, we did do just about a $500,000 loan. We hadn't done one for quite some time. And that pushed us over the amount we had. We don't know. We didn't know at the beginning of the year whether we were going to do any loans. So that gets that caught up. General Bond Retirement Fund. This is really not changing any expenditures. This is pay our general fund type of, our general governmental debt. And I had appropriated these expenditures for principal and interest. It's for short-term notes out of the CIP fund and the park tax levy fund. But after reviewing it a little bit more, it's better to have it all come out of the general admin. So we won't use the other appropriation, just shifts it over into a general bond retirement fund. It's more of an accounting change. The FAA improvement grant is kind of one of those. When we did the budget for 2015, we weren't quite sure what was all going to happen with the runway extension. We did do a supplemental 3, 4, 5 months ago when we were aware we're going to do all $4.5 million of the project. But I had Rob in my office spend quite a bit of time trying to get. There's two funds. There's the FAA allocation fund, and there's the FAA discretionary fund. Making sure that we've got the right, our budget reflects the right fund of those two and where the federal money comes from, monies come from. So he's gone all through that, and we have to kind of realign it. So it's an increase in this fund and a decrease. The next line item is a decrease. So there's really not changing any expenditures, just getting the right appropriation in the right fund. Glen Road South is the community authority, and really all we're doing out of that fund is issuing and reissuing notes annually. And my projection for the interest cost was a little bit lower than what it actually ended up being. So I need to increase the appropriation for that. All that will be paid ultimately by the community authority. Golf course fund, wages and personnel costs were over by $3,600. There's only the one full-time position. The only thing I kind of say is I know we had a permanent part-time position in 2014. We did away with that and perhaps didn't add as much seasonal hours to cover, but that's what that is. Both the water fund and then next to that is the wastewater fund or sewer fund. We've got a little bit of, I'm not sure, I'll try to figure it out. On the personnel side, we've seemed to have this last couple of years. Part of it's just our payroll system because we split, like Brad's time is split between two different funds and Perry's time and a couple others. But for whatever reason, we're picking somebody up. I think that should be in the wastewater treatment plant, and they got paid partially out of this fund because the wastewater treatment fund, their wages and benefits are like $40,000, $50,000 below the appropriate amount. But anyways, I'll try to figure out who that is. The other amounts in there are we did have a apartment complex over on Stratford Road that we actually had a big meter. Normally when they fail or they're off, they under read. This one had some other issue. Brad could probably explain it. But anyways, we had a fairly large refund, way more than what we ever would have to issue back. So part of it came out of the water fund, the other came out of the wastewater fund. Garage Rotary Fund, $30,000. We did do a supplemental 4 or 5 months ago or whenever it was. I don't know, maybe Bill can add to it, but our repair costs have been a lot higher on our vehicles for whatever reason. The big number there, health insurance fund, we've talked about that as we've kind of moved through the year. I've shared with you my finance report that our health insurance costs are coming in a lot higher than previous years. We had some discussion at budget time about the health insurance fund balance. A good portion of this gets reimbursed through our stop loss coverage, which is a good thing, but it also puts pressure on our stop loss premiums moving forward because they pay out a lot. They're going to, potentially our premiums are going to go up. We're still in pretty good shape with our health insurance fund. There's no need to change anything from a budget standpoint, but for whatever reason, we had a lot higher claims this year than what we traditionally have had. The Mayor's Donation Fund, again, that's just an estimated amount that we budget each year, not knowing exactly how and when or to what extent we may use or the mayor may use those funds. I don't think we're over, but $250, I think it's just a small amount, but I'm not sure if there's perhaps some invoices yet that might come in from the Christmas party or whatever else. So I kind of bumped it up a little bit. I think we should be okay at the 250 level. And as I indicate there is probably about $1,500 in that fund carried over into next year.
I have 4 weddings this week, so that'll make up for that.
Maybe 1,600 carried over into next year. The Perpetual Care Fund, this was part of the cemetery. When we took over the cemetery, there were certain monies that were part of a perpetual care that was different than what people paid a small amount when they bought a burial plot. This was where people actually donated money, like for their mother or whatever else. They'd give $5,000, and then with the stipulation that they put on the. So we track all that, and I put that in a separate fund. It was kind of just in the cemetery fund. That way we can make sure it is a trust fund, and we won't spend, we'll track that separately as that moves forward. And there were expenditures. We created the fund last year, but we didn't budget to expend the money. And so this just picks up the appropriation. So those are the year-end supplementals. I did make one, I did send out a draft of the ordinance on Friday, but I did add section 18, which is more of just hopefully avoiding a notation in our audit report. It indicates that there is hereby advanced from the general fund $61,000 to the Community Development Block Grant Fund to cover the year-end cash balance shortfall. This amount will be reimbursed back. We do that on a reimbursing basis. A lot of those grants like that, we expend the funds and then we request reimbursement. Sometimes it takes a couple months to get the money back. Well, if it's at year end like it is this year, we may get it before the end of the year. But if we don't, it goes into 2016, we'll get that money back, but I'll have a negative cash balance. And so if I advance money from the general fund, then I won't get a notation of that in our audit report. So that's the only other change. Entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions? All right. What is the wish of council?
Move for the adoption of the emergency clause on ordinance 15-122.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Move for approval on ordinance 15-122.
Second.
Do we need an emergency clause in there?
Yes.
Did we do the rule suspension? I got 3 things on here.
We
You
need
only
to
said 2.
suspend.
Yeah, I need to
So why
suspend
don't
the
you
rules.
suspend the rules and then we'll approve it?
I move for the suspension of the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 15-122.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
We've already done the emergency clause, right?
Okay, we'll go back to the bottom one. Adoption.
Okay, so now I move for approval of ordinance 15-122.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Loudly.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. And thank staff for all their hard work. I know this is not an easy time of year. I really appreciate it. Item 15 is city manager's report.
Just a couple of items. I've got a, yeah, I know, well, they'll go quickly. I have a meeting with Tim Hansley on Wednesday, county administrator, just to go over any county city issues. One of them is this resolution, the parking issue that was brought up at Parking and Safety. I plan to get the information that Parking and Safety was looking for and just go over any other outstanding issues the city and county have. I will be at the State House tomorrow for the afternoon on the State House, the license fee fund, the license fee, trying to start the process with the legislators to talk about a piece of legislation, hopefully in 2016. Warming Center, I think you probably got the emails on Saturday. Jackie was working the shift, and it was empty at the end.
Well, except for all the volunteers.
Yeah, a lot of volunteers that night, and I guess they're very well prepared in terms of all of the bedding they have and supplies. So we just have to figure out what's going on with the weather. If fortunately, nobody showed up. And so my thanks to Jackie and and others who showed up that night to help, but for her for working the shift. Capital bill appropriations, the state house is going to be entertaining requests for capital requests. And you may recall that we had requested several years ago when John Peterson was state representative, the project that put the bike path on US 23, where Hull Drive is. And we have the opportunity to submit another project, possible trail project for 2016. I'm going to send everybody a copy of it. It would be really connecting the links on William Street from Houck going east. You may recall that there are several pieces that right now are not finished over there. So we're taking a look at that. And I'll send a note out to everybody just to take a look at that and get your feedback on that. Last year's capital bill had in it, or 2 years ago, had the funding for the Vets Plaza. That's what was requested. I know the Strand has requested dollars as well as for continued improvements at the Strand Theater. And Gene Buckingham called me today. I mentioned this to the mayor about he's interested in this Hayes Memorial, getting a meeting going. So he's asked for a meeting in January the 13th at 7. I'll send out some information if you're interested. I know he's got a kind of a small committee he's formed to start looking at some recommendations for that for next year. And finally, my thanks to City Council for their approval of tonight's budget and all of the hard work that you put into it. We look forward to, staff and I, a lot of 2016 is going to be a busy year, and look forward to continuing to work with you on what's in the budget. Thank you.
Okay. Council comments. Mr. Jones.
Just want to thank my colleagues and staff for all the cards and calls and texts passing my father last week. I appreciate it. And special thank you to Jackie and Tom, who made the 2-hour trek out to middle of nowhere for calling hours last week. It was a long drive. I know, and I appreciate it. My family appreciates it. So thank you to everybody. I'm not looking forward to the next 2 weeks with the holidays, but you know, here's what it is. But thank you all very much. That's it. Go and Merry Christmas.
Mrs. Geller.
Merry Christmas.
Mr. DeGenova.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Got to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, you do.
Wish everybody a happy holiday season, and I look forward to working again with everybody next year. It's another great year. It's been a good year.
Well, I just hope that everybody enjoys their family and their loved ones over the holidays, and it's going to be tough for some of them. So, and with that, I look for
The Rev 1 project for the tour. I'm sorry.
That,
Rev 1, who's interested in that Martin Luther King Day possible tour of the Rev 1 facility? This is the Entrepreneurial Center. Where's Sean? Over there. Is there an interest? I know I can't make it. I've got a son to return to college that weekend on that Monday, but
What day is it?
this is a Monday, Martin Luther King Day. They can do it in the afternoon, but we can, if there's not an interest, I know Carolyn asked me earlier because she's got to request the time off.
Is it?
It's downtown.
Oh,
Have we checked with the county to see if Gary Merrill can go?
I'm
That
not
was the
sure.
whole purpose of doing this,
Yeah.
because he said he wouldn't have a buy into it unless he could go and visit one.
Okay.
So I think.
Why don't we check with,
Yeah.
I'll check with him tomorrow.
Oh, you
and
mean
find
with
out.
Tim?
Yeah,
Okay,
and I'll let everybody know
all right.
if you have an interest.
Okay, now we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We are adjourned at 7:33.
It's going to be hard to get everybody together. I don't think there's any. It's a holiday.
I know.